Hello and welcome back to another edition of the Stony Brook Evening News Break. I'm Christopher Yang.
And I'm Ava Shea, bringing you the latest news. Coming out of the first cabinet meeting of his second term, President Trump says the Ukraine can forget about joining NATO. Two topics dominated the meeting: the war in Ukraine and the Elon Musk-led Department of Government Efficiency. The president gave an update on the impending mineral deal he has planned with Ukraine, saying Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky intends to visit Washington, D.C. on Friday. Zelensky says that the agreement would fail if Ukraine does not get adequate protection against Russia. Trump doubled down on blaming the start of the conflict on Ukraine and did not mention any concessions Russia would have to make in peace talks. Musk, the first to speak after the president, defended DOGE, outlining his plan to continue to reduce the size of the federal government.
And now let's go to our reporter, Quincy Brigham, with the latest on the updates on Trump's executive orders.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. This is the beginning.
Donald Trump is officially back in the White House. In the short amount of time that the president has been back in the Oval Office, he has been busy ushering in his new agenda through a slew of executive orders. Trump has personally signed 67 executive orders since the beginning of his second term, more than any president has signed in their first 100 days in over 40 years. Though the subject matter of these executive orders varies greatly across different topics, there are multiple that directly affect universities and the students who attend them.
One of the first that comes to mind in terms of the executive orders is kind of like banning transgender individuals from participating in sports under a gender that they identify with, right? And instead requiring them to participate in sports based on the sex that they were assigned at birth. This seems to it'll have a direct impact on college athletes, and you see kind of organizations like the NCAA coming out and saying that, yeah, we're going to follow this executive order, which is an interesting kind of like shift from prior policy decisions.
Immigration policy has also changed drastically since Trump's return. On his second day back in office, the president signed an executive order removing college campuses from a list of sensitive locations where immigration enforcement agencies avoided operating, leaving many students scared for what the future of their university may look like.
Colleges and universities like to protect their students and their faculty, and so if a university has undocumented students on their campus, a lot of them try to protect those students from the sort of immigration enforcement. But the government now is saying if you shield immigrants, if you shield immigration enforcement, if you don't let them do their job on campus, we will take federal money away. So that's also going to impact obviously a lot of students around the country, right? Even if this refers to students who are in the country under DACA, right? They came here as young children, brought here by their parents, right? They've lived in America practically their whole lives, but now the government can say to the universities, we're not going to, if you shield these students, we're going to take all your federal money away. So that's going to be a huge issue.
Changes such as these, along with substantial cutbacks on federal grants and the elimination of DEI programs, have left many universities in a state of panic and uncertainty about the future as the second Trump administration continues to take shape.
Now back to Christopher Yang with an exclusive interview with Olga Kostanova on the Ukraine-America mineral deal.
Hello everyone. In the studio today we have Olga Kostanova, fellow at Foreign Policy Research Institute and a PhD candidate at the Political Science Department at Stony Brook University, who has worked as a journalist in Russia. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I've been doing okay. So, first question. Trump and Zelensky have been feuding for the past few weeks, with Trump calling him a dictator and Zelensky saying that Trump lives in a disinformation space, creating tension between America and Ukraine. Last week, U.S. officials met with Russian counterparts to negotiate an end-of-war agreement without Ukraine having a seat. So what has happened within the last few hours to make this deal between Ukraine and America happen?
Well, several things I think have been happening behind the scenes. So one thing I think that is important to understand is that this is Trump-style negotiation. So at first he delivers something that no one can take, but everyone is shocked. So he can walk back and then the deal is acceptable. So this is what happened with Ukraine. So the shocking part was that Ukraine owes $500 billion to the US for all the military aid that has been delivered to it. But now it has been sort of walked back and become more acceptable to Ukraine. There is a lot of details that we still don't know, but I think on balance, Ukraine finds the current package more or less acceptable. The details probably will surface a bit later.
Right. So speaking of the new president, he has shown a completely different stance compared to President Biden. How is this going to affect American-Ukrainian and American-Russian relationships in the future?
Well, I think one important thing that has changed is that it's actually a 180 turn on the foreign policy in the United States. And a lot of foreign policy professionals were really surprised by this turn of events. I think it benefits Russia for sure, but not probably in the grand way as it's often reported in the media. There is still a lot that the US and Russia have to discuss, but it's still better for Russia because it might get a little bit more than it could have got under Biden administration. When it comes to the US and Ukraine, well, obviously it's not an easy relationship, but Ukraine is in a situation where it has to accept what it's been given because it has no other options. So this is where we are right now.
Yeah, tumultuous times going forward.
True.
One big question between the two sides is what's going to happen to the territory that Russia has kind of taken over. What do you think is going to happen?
Well, this is one big demand from the Russian government. So at the moment, the Russian troops are occupying 4 regions of Ukraine, but not fully. And they want all 4 of them. So one offer that has been put on the table is that the conflict will be frozen on the contact line, so where the current sort of military are currently fighting. But Russia says that this is not possible for it because there is no such provision in the Russian constitution, and therefore it will probably be trying to negotiate to take over all 4 of these regions so Putin can declare victory to the domestic audience. What the US is going to do, I don't know. I think this is something that the Trump administration will have to discuss with the Russians.
Right. Very cloudy future going forward. So just final question then is, hopefully, do you think that Russia and Ukraine are able to finally settle this and move forward with peace?
I'm not optimistic. I think the ceasefire is going to be achieved because at least at this point, both sides realize that the killings have to stop, and it's not feasible for either country, and more so for Ukraine, and also for Europe, and maybe the United States. So the deal will be done. We don't know the shape of it. But in terms of the Ukraine-Russia relationship, I think it's ruined for generations, probably. So we will not see anything positive there, maybe for at least until Putin is gone. And then reconciliation, maybe, if the Ukrainian people are willing to even consider that after what Russia has done.
Right. Hopefully peace will be attained. Thank you so much, Olga, for the interview.
Thank you for having me.
And back to you, Ava, at the desk.
Amid a legal battle with the Associated Press news agency, the White House will now decide which journalists will be granted access to the President Trump's events. White House officials will now determine who attends said events in places like the Oval Office. But more importantly, they now choose who can ask the president questions. The White House Correspondents Association, which the responsibility previously fell on, said the chance tears at the independence of the free press. While the Trump administration claimed that the D.C.-based journalists had a monopoly on the press access to the White House, earlier this week, a U.S. judge refused to order the White House to restore the WHCA, but next month a more extensive hearing about the dispute will be held.
And now let's go to Thomas Pardo with our sports update.
Thank you, Chris. It has been an exciting week of sports so far. On Tuesday night, the New York Islanders faced off against their in-state rivals, the New York Rangers, at UBS Arena. It was a close game early as both teams scored within the first 9 minutes of action, with defenseman Urho Vakanainen scoring for the Rangers and defenseman Alexander Romanov scoring for the Islanders. However, the game would flip as Johnny Brodzinski scored 2 goals later in the first period to give the Rangers a 3-1 lead. In the second period, 2 more goals would help their lead grow to 5-1, which would be the final score. The loss for the Islanders continues a stretch of struggles as they drop their 4th consecutive game. The Islanders will look to bounce back on Thursday night as they will head to the TD Garden in Boston and battle the Bruins. The Rangers will be back in action on Friday night at home at Madison Square Garden in the game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Diana Taurasi, the WNBA's all-time leading scorer, announced her retirement from basketball on Tuesday. Taurasi had a decorated career in college and professionally, winning multiple championships, including 3 national titles with the Yukon Huskies. During her 20-year career in the league, all with the Phoenix Mercury, she cemented herself as one of the best players in league history. Taurasi is also the only player to score at least 10,000 points, as she scored 10,646, almost 3,000 more than the next closest player, Tina Charles. Among her many accolades with the Mercury, she won the WNBA championship 3 times and was named Finals MVP twice. Taurasi also had a storied Olympic career as she won gold 6 times as a member of Team USA, including a win at the 2024 Summer Olympics in Paris, which was her last international tournament. Congratulations to Diana Taurasi on a phenomenal career. Let's send it back to the desk with Chris and Ava.
And that's all from us for this edition of the Stony Brook Evening News Break. I'm Ava Shea.
And I'm Christopher Yang. See you guys next time. Let's go. Good job.